Hello, a fresh wave of snow is bringing more travel chaos to the region this evening. Luton Airport is closed with all flights suspended. Stansted is also seeing heavy snow and the snowplows are out.
The latest weather is moving from the southwest. The airport in Luton closed at about 5 o'clock with thousands of people trying to get away for their Christmas holidays. Our reporter Mike Cartwright is close to Luton now. What's happening, Mike?
Well, have a look. I don't know if the camera can get a shot of those lights, but just look at the snow that is coming down here. It's literally just opened up in the last hour or so. I don't know if I can just show you this as well. Look. I mean, there's got to be a good sort of 7 centimetres, well, not 7 centimetres, a good couple of inches there. Now, we've been at Caddington on a different story, and we were thinking about going to Luton, but it's just come down so quickly, and the roads around here were just already pretty icy that we just thought we'd better not risk it to get on in time. But, I mean, all day, airplanes have been coming over here from Stansted, but they stopped about 5 o'clock. Now, I spoke to EasyJet, who fly out of Stansted. They say they've had to cancel 15 flights this evening. They think it's going to be closed for at least 4 or 5 hours, and that adds up to about 1,000 or so passengers. Now, if you just bear in mind that's just one carrier, you can think of the difficulties that people are going through there tonight and the frustration of people trying to get away for Christmas. Of course, it closed on Friday as well, when the last big dump, if you like, came down, and it was closed all morning and didn't really open up until 11:30. But here, we're here filming with people who've had their electricity cut. I've just heard that about 100 or so people have just lost their electricity just in the last half an hour or so, and around 600 people are waiting to have their gas reconnected, and some of those could be off power till at least Christmas Eve.
Right, thank you very much.
Well, let's cross to Stansted now, where the snow is also causing problems. We can talk to Margaret McCartney from Norwich. She's booked on a Ryanair flight to Belfast, but the plane is still on the ground. Margaret, I know you're actually sitting on the plane. When were you meant to take off?
We were meant to take off at 10 to 5.
And have you been told a lot about what is going on at the airport?
We were told we would take off about 10 past 5 when we first got on, and then shortly afterwards that Stansted had closed altogether because of the very heavy snow, and it would reopen in 45 minutes. And after 45 minutes, we've been updated each time to be told that our next possible time that we will take off is at 7 o'clock.
So you're hoping to take off at 7 o'clock. What is the mood like on the plane? Because obviously you've all been sitting there quite a while now.
Well, actually, it's fairly good-humoured. We haven't been given any glasses of red wine, unfortunately, yet, but fairly good-humoured.
And at Stansted, was it quite chaotic when you first arrived there, or was everything kind of going according to plan originally?
Things were going according to plan. Most flights seemed to be on time. We were maybe 15 minutes delayed going on.
So did the airline say it's because of the snow and they're trying to clear the runways? Is that what the problem is?
Yes, that's what the problem is, yes.
Well, I do hope you get off at 7, and I do hope you enjoy your Christmas. Thank you very much, Margaret.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
The energy company EDF promised today to carry out a review of the way it handled the Christmas power cuts. It comes after a wave of complaints from customers who had to spend up to 3 days without power. We'll be hearing from EDF in a moment. But first, Alex Dunlop on what happened when the lights went out across the region.
This morning, people in Beeston could at least rely on one source of light. For 3 days, a quarter of the village in Norfolk has been without power. Gerald lost his supply on Thursday. At 84, he gets by with one lung and 2 artificial hips. You have to use a stair lift. How did you get downstairs?
On my bottom.
You came down on your bottom?
Yeah.
And then where did you sleep when you couldn't get upstairs?
In the chair. I slept in the chair, and, it's just because I couldn't get up the stair lift again. Because that wouldn't work, you see, with no electric.
Down the road, Alan got by with a camping stove. His wife has suspected cancer. Despite that, he says EDF showed little sympathy.
She is, as EDF were told, a possible cancer subject, and it did not seem to make any difference whatsoever. In fact, well, sorry about that, but we are busy, we are working on it.
Brian and Cynthia finally have power, but for 3 days they just sat and shivered.
I can't ever remember being so cold that we were cold right to the core and we were shaken.
Yesterday, EDF engineers restored power to the village, but Brian says they're unfairly stretched.
They've got not enough staff to do this job now. they just rely on good weather. And I don't know, it just seems wrong that they should cut back these people. And these chaps have worked so hard.
Beeston wasn't the only village out in the cold. 90 miles away at Caddington in Bedfordshire, water from a burst pipe got into the gas supply, affecting 1,200 homes. It prompted a huge surge in demand for electricity, which then blew the power supply to 100 homes, including that of Charles and Claire West.
It's just a case of keeping as many layers on as possible, hats and gloves, and keeping as warm as possible, really. We had no way of heating any food, or we had no breakfast. We had to leave without any breakfast this morning.
I've been very disappointed with the electricity company, EDF, who have not performed the way that I would expect them to. They were warned on Saturday that this spike was coming. I would have expected them to have reacted in a better way than they have done.
The worst may not be over. More snow is on its way tonight for some parts of our region. Alex Dunlop, BBC Look East.
So when the power goes off in this part of the world, people call EDF. But what do we know about the company? What exactly does it do? This report from Ian Barmer.
When power lines go down, this is how they see it at EDF headquarters in Ipswich. The east is a big region and many power lines are overhead, vulnerable to high winds and damage from ice and snow. On Look East, we've regularly reported EDF's problems. Back in 2007, it was gales. 12,000 homes across the east without power, some for 4 days. Then EDF promised a thorough review of its performance. This is what they said.
I fully appreciate some customers have been without their electricity for 3 or 4 days, and that is obviously very difficult for them. And again, we'll think about what else we can do.
EDF is part of a huge European group. Here in Britain, it does the lot. It generates electricity, it sells electricity and gas, and then it distributes electricity. But according to the Office of Gas and Electricity Markets, EDF in the east could do better. In 2008-09, it was the second worst supplier out of 14 for customer minutes lost, and joint third worst for interruptions to supply. EDF has tried hard to sort this latest problem out, but that may not count for much to those who were cut off. Ian Barmer, BBC Look East.
Well, earlier today I spoke to Tony Gray, the head of customer services for EDF, and I asked him to give the company marks out of 10 for how they dealt with this situation.
Well, I think we've done very well in the circumstances. I would say at least 8 out of 10 if you wanted to give me a figure, but that's not really the important thing. It's the fact that we desperately tried hard to get all of our customers back on supply as quickly as we could.
The thing is that lots of people would give the engineers 10 out of 10 and the communications staff probably 1 or 2 out of 10. Would you agree with that?
I understand that customers have had problems in getting through to us, and this was always going to be the case on the first evening and then on Friday when we had such a high volume of calls into our call centre. But we did bring in extra resources to answer the phones, not only here in Ipswich but also at our other call centres, so that we could try and answer the calls. But when you have thousands of customers trying to ring in at once, it's very difficult, and we understand that some customers may well have had to wait a long time to get through to us. But, we do sympathise with that.
If you have no power and you're sitting around in a freezing cold house waiting for 45 minutes to get through, and then some customers tell us that the staff were rude, that's not acceptable, is it?
It certainly is not acceptable if we were rude at all, and I am so sorry if that was the case. But certainly we understand that customers may well have had a long wait to get through to us. I'm sorry if that was the case, but I promise you we had as many people in to answer calls as we possibly could.
Some people were told to check on your website. Now, if you've got no power, how are you going to check on the website?
Well, that's a good point, but many people nowadays have mobile phones with the technology to look at the internet, and Blackberries and other sorts of handheld devices. And of course those who were working in offices at the weekend may well have been able to check the internet or have had relatives or friends to do that for them. And we are finding that more and more people now use the internet and our main website to track how the storm and supplies restoration is going.
Why weren't your staff more visible on radio and television, which is the best way of telling customers what's going on? Why was it that all we had from you were occasional statements about what was going on?
Well, it's not always possible to get out on site to film our crews, and I know you were keen to come out.
We were asking about somebody coming in or coming on the telephone and telling us what's going on. That was not available to us.
Well, I'm sorry if that happened, Stuart. I mean, I'm here to now answer your questions, and if I can help you...
But things are getting back to normal now. I can understand why you're coming now, because the situation is getting back to normal. But when it was at its worst, nobody was available.
Well, once again, all of our managers were having strategic roles throughout the weekend to manage our staff and make sure that they were safe, and we focused on the restoration effort.
So all of those people involved in communications were helping to restore the service to those customers who were cut off?